And when it comes to hypocrisy, the GOP always tends to deliver. This time, when it comes to this is when it comes to voter restriction and voter suppression. And this time we go to a case in Arkansas where a 79-year-old woman by the name of Joy Dunn recently found out that she was ineligible to vote. Now, Ms. Dunn tried to vote in a recent special election in Arkansas. Now, according to Think Progress, she recently received a letter telling her that her vote was thrown out because she didn't have the right kind of ID. Now, she did have several different types of ID. So, what happened? Okay, we'll get into that. But first, I want to go to a quote from her. She said, quote, "I got a letter saying my vote wasn't counted because I didn't have ID. But I've been voting in that state since 1954, and I've never had to have ID. I didn't know I was supposed to send an ID this time. Nobody told me." So this is the problem that goes along with voter ID laws. They're not clear. And they leave out certain types of ID, add in other types of ID. The rules are murky, and really it just ends up leading to voter suppression, people getting their votes thrown out. And of course, Ms. Dunn equated these voter ID laws to the very first time she cast a ballot back in 1954. And how does she equate it to? Or what does she equate it to? A poll tax. That this is essentially a poll tax. Making her go around and get a special ID, travel, etc. That's a poll tax. It costs money to go around to get all these different certificates that you need to get this voter ID. Essentially a poll tax. And that makes sense because it does leave out minorities and people who are older, Ms. Dunn being, of course, over 65. She said, quote, "This is to do anything they can to stop some folks from voting." I couldn't agree more. And this brings us to another story that is kind of ironic. Apparently the same kind of strict voting laws that stopped Joy Dunn from casting her ballot also hit a GOP candidate for Attorney General in Arkansas. Here's the irony. Now, this candidate was named Leslie Rutledge, and basically she was kicked off the voter rolls after she failed to cancel a previous voter registration in D.C. and Virginia and re-register in her county, which is Pulaski County, when she moved. Now, of course, instead of blaming more strict voting laws that she did help to get on the books and that she did defend, she decided to blame this on someone else. According to Think Progress, Rutledge argued that she tried to register to vote, but that the clerk's office gave her a change of address form instead. "Oh, it wasn't me, they just gave me the wrong form." Quote, "I don't know if I made any mistakes except listening to the clerk, and I should have insisted they accept my form when they refused it." And this was her talking to ArkansasMatters.com. So, they gave her the wrong form. Apparently, there seems to be a large amount of confusion surrounding these new voter rules in Arkansas. And, of course, the different forms that you have to fill out. Now, here's some more of that irony. She's claiming voter suppression for this. The Republican National Lawyers Association said that she was, quote, "systematically removed from voter rolls within 90 days of a federal election." You're not the only one that's happened to. The fact is that it's clear and unmistakable attempt at the most harmful kind of voter suppression in violation of federal law. Removing a qualified female voter from the rolls, notwithstanding her valid registration and actual votes in the last 4 elections, in violation of her civil rights, Democrats should be embarrassed. Democrats should be embarrassed. Somehow she's doing reverse voter suppression charges on the Democrats when someone like Joy Dunn can get removed since she's voted from 1954. Does that make any fucking sense to you? And did I mention that this attorney general that got kicked off the rolls also helped defend these same strict election laws? The same ones that tripped her up and Joy Dunn up? Irony, man. Sean, what do you think?
First of all, it's obviously hilarious that he got hit by, our Attorney General gets hit by the law that they defended. So classic. But yeah, this is a horrible case, and the fact that she's been voting since 1954, which is the year that Brown versus Board of Ed was decided, is also kind of like weird. It's just like she's been voting since a time when you really had like people intimidating minorities away from the vote. And what she's saying is she got through all of that all this time in Arkansas, and then all of a sudden she doesn't have the proper form of ID and she's thrown off the rolls. Like, I'm not one of those people who's like crazy about voting or anything. I personally don't endorse voting in any way, but it needs to be pointed out every time we do one of these stories that the crime that they're trying to prevent doesn't happen often, and it's totally pointless. Like, and it's what you call, it's so pointless that there's no need for the voter ID requirement, even though it might sound like it makes sense. I need to show ID, yada yada yada, like to vote because I show ID for other things. Like, in-person voter fraud doesn't change an election because in-person voter fraud is so rare. Like, 2 votes aren't going to change anything. This is a way overreaction. It's obviously racially and, more importantly, politically motivated to prevent certain people who vote from Democrats for voting. Go ahead, Tom.
Can we be honest about what this is? Can we just for a moment? This is like complete suppression of the vote. They have no fucking ideas. They have the only thing they recycle is shitty Reagan ideas at that. And the only way they can win is by the lowest amount of people voting, and that's where you get apathy, and that's where you get this. There's no voter fraud. I think I nixed a show or a story on my show about the only voter fraud, or maybe I did it, I can't remember. The only voter fraud that they found was because of identity theft. That's where voter fraud comes in now, where people might be stealing the information for identity theft. This is a made-up scandal, just like Benghazi, just like Hookergate. This is, which is a new one, another made-up scandal because they have fucking horrible ideas. Unless you're rich, then it's all good.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, Goo syndrome, right? You remember that. Pretty much the father of modern conservatism. The less people vote, the better chance we have of not winning. And so, you know, and that's the guy, like, father of modern conservatism. I forget his name, but that's the plan.
But to Tom's point, at least Benghazi's a place where something happened. Like, there's like one case every year in the entire 50 states. Like, it literally has affected no elections.
I want to make a really bad Benghazi joke, so I won't. But
you are more likely to get abducted by aliens, or to say that you've been abducted by aliens, or to have a candy machine fall on you and kill you, than to be basically to perpetrate in-person voter fraud.
No, I'm more likely to get laid by Sean than somebody to actually come across with more than 100 cases of voter fraud this season. Let's be honest about it. It's bullshit. It's because they don't have ideas. And the Democrats who do have ideas aren't winning because they're not running on populist ideas like Senator Warren.
Right, and the people that have ideas, they're bad ideas. They're the same Republican ideas that they've passed, that they've taken from conservatives, because everybody thinks that America is more conservative than it really is. Liberal's a dirty word still. And what was it? There was a study that came out that said that the average congressman thinks that his jurisdiction, right, is more conservative than a place in Louisiana, than the most conservative county in Louisiana. That's what the average congressman thinks their electorate is made up of. They think they're that conservative. So they obviously go to more conservative ideas.
Jeff, these are the same people who get paid by the Koch brothers, by the way, Wolfpack plug here, get paid by the Koch brothers to deny something that's right in front of their eyes. 35,000 walruses don't have ice to land on, but that's no big deal. But voter ID suppression is the biggest deal, like the coming of Christ to these people. It drives me nuts. These phony issues drives me nuts.